I'm sorry, the doctor is out. Let's talk about it on this episode of Pushback.
Go, Jonny, go, go. Go, Jonny, go, go. Go, Jonny, go, go.
If you're concerned about the direction our culture is heading, then maybe it's time to push back.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Jonny, and this is another episode of Pushback. I'm so glad you could join me again this week as we are digging into fairly serious societal cultural issues because of the tremendous weight that is placed on our children in this culture. And I believe that if we're not careful, or maybe the ship has already sailed, that the result and the decisions that are made in our culture is actually killing our children. And I say that to get the attention of parents, to get the attention of educators, to get the attention of pastors, the people in our society that cares about the hearts of our children. And I believe that's everybody. So I hope we can find some common ground in these topics as we lean into what the Father created. And what He created for us was good. And it was a good culture. It was a healthy culture. And His heart was for us to thrive and to live with destiny and with purpose. And when the culture pushes up against that, we need to push back. And that's the point of this podcast. This section, or the series that we are in sort of this second quarter of the year, is talking about pseudoscience. You know, science and technology isn't good or bad. It's just how we use it, how we approach it. And science is supposed to be that place, that realm of discernment that we are given by the Lord to discover His creation. And science isn't bad. Science isn't good. Science is a study. As we study and we learn and we discover the immensity and beauty of His creation, it helps us. It helps us in life. It helps us with conveniences of life. It helps us thrive. It helps us stay healthy. These are the ways that we can use technology and science to our benefit, and we have throughout the years. And I am in a profession, a medical profession. I'm a medical doctor, well over 20 years now of experience. And I am so grateful for my profession, but there has been a shift, even in our profession, as it is beginning to bow a knee to the irrationality of this woke ideology that's taking place. And it's interesting. I want to give you a perspective of a physician and how, honestly, I'm floored by the way my profession is responding to the things and the ways of society. In fact, I can use the word I'm embarrassed, honestly, of the way that the medical profession is approaching some of these cultural topics, because we removed our objectivity and we bowed a knee to an ideology rather than practice what we've been trained to do, and that's evidence-based medicine. It means we do it if we can prove it, and we don't do it if we can't. There's something called a Hippocratic Oath. You guys are probably familiar with that, what we are supposed to recite when we receive our medical degree. And the first part of the Hippocratic Oath is to first do no harm. The most important thing that we can do is not hurt people. That we are there to relieve suffering and pain and fight disease and make diagnoses. That's what we're there for. But we are not here to harm people. That's our first thing. That's the first ethical place. There's 4 principles of ethics in modern medicine. It's autonomy, justice, non-maleficence, and beneficence. We work to help people. They have freedom to make their own decisions. We do what's right, and we don't hurt them by our actions and the decisions that we make. I read an article last podcast, and I really ask you to lean into that. And I'm going to cite a few more paragraphs from the super well-written article. And I left out some portions that I wanted to talk about very specifically today about modern medicine. And it goes on to write, the social justice paradigm rests on the notion that racism, sexism, transphobia, and other biases are so deeply embedded in our society that they can be eradicated only through constant focus on the problem. Any people or institutions that don't participate in this process need to be singled out for criticism. I always scratch my head, honestly, wondering, like, why do these major companies like Budweiser and other companies, why do they dip their toe into these realms that seem unnecessary? For them to dip their toe into the transgender world doesn't really help them sell beer, and obviously prohibited them from selling beer, for instance. And I ask the same thing about the medical community. Like, we're there to serve and to do our job and to follow evidence-based medicine, and yet hospitals are jumping in with both feet into this woke ideology, and the hospital where I work at, unfortunately, is no different. It's alive and well, and we don't have to look much farther than just the acceptance, the coddling of the pronoun issues, and yet it defies basic common sense understanding of male and female biology. And I did chuckle, not to be disrespectful, but if there's any profession on the planet that should understand basic biology, it should be physicians. We study it in detail, not only study it, but it actually affects the way that we approach a patient, whether they're male or whether they're female. I mean, obviously, it's just common sense. And they're telling us that we need to be more understanding of the differences and different ways that people can identify. Well, I'm sorry, biology is pretty straightforward. It's a chromosomal manifestation of who we are, and we can see it and we can study it and we can treat people based on that. Anything else beyond that then becomes a psychological issue that we'll talk about in a few minutes. He goes on to write, this dynamic is especially intense in the debates over transgender medicine. The last decade has seen a huge surge in children claiming dissatisfaction with their gender. Well, this should not surprise us because there's constant focus on the problem. If we constantly focus on this ethereal problem in the atmosphere, people are going to focus on it. And then children are going to start to question, well, yeah, maybe that can be me. Maybe I'm not right. Maybe there is something wrong. I didn't think there was something wrong, but now that you keep bringing it up, maybe I think that could be me. It's a manifestation of obsession. According to one survey, the number of children aged 6 to 17 diagnosed with gender dysphoria surged from roughly 15,000 to 42,000 in just the years between 2017 and 2021 alone. In 4 years, it quadrupled. Is it because we're getting so good now at diagnosing it and understanding it and people now feel more comfortable coming forward? No, it's because we're constantly focusing on it, and it's a manifestation, it's a prophetic manifestation of what we've been calling out into our society. It doesn't surprise me at all. The number of kids prescribed hormones to block puberty more than doubled. Puberty blockers and other treatments for gender dysphoria have enormous potential lifelong consequences, including sterility, sexual dysfunction, and interference with brain development. Families facing treatment decisions for youth gender dysphoria desperately need clear, objective guidance, and they're not getting it. This is the part that angers me. This is the part that exasperates me as a physician, because this is what we're here for. And instead of standing up for our patients, instead of digging into the root causes and issues of their dysphoria, we are actually coddling it and surrounding it with our arms and calling it normal, which I believe is the most cruel, maleficent thing that we can do to these young people. And yet we took the Hippocratic oath that we wouldn't hurt them. And yet the puberty blockers cause sterility, dysfunction, brain development problems. What are we doing? Instead, medical organizations and media outlets typically describe experimental hormone treatments and surgeries as routine and even life-saving, when in fact their benefits remain contested while the risks are enormous. In a series of articles, the Manhattan Institute Lior Sapir has documented how trans advocates enforce this appearance of consensus among U.S. scientists, medical experts, and many journalists. It's called pseudoscience, my friends. They are no longer scientists. Through social media campaigns and other tools, yeah, that sounds real scientific, these activists have forced conferences to drop leading scientists, gotten journals to withdraw scientific papers after publication, and interfere with the distribution of Abigail Schreier's 2020 book, Irreversible Damage, which challenges the wisdom of gender-affirming care for adolescent girls. While skeptics are cowed into silence, Sapir concludes that those who advocate fast-tracking children for radical gender therapy will go down in history as responsible for one of the worst medical scandals in U.S. history. This is my profession, folks, and I'm embarrassed. And I couldn't agree with that sentence more. We are going to be judged decades from now on what we did to these children in the name of woke flag waving. He goes on to write, in such an overheated environment, it would be helpful to have a journalistic outlet advocating a sober, evidence-based approach. Scientific American, that we talked about last week, might have been that voice. Unfortunately, SciAm today downplays messy debates about gender therapies while offering sunny platitudes about the safety and efficacy of hormone treatments for prepubescent patients. For example, in 2023, article titled, "What are puberty blockers and how do they work?" the magazine repeats the unsubstantiated claim that such treatments are crucial to preventing suicide among gender dysphoric children. These medications are well studied and have been used safely since the late 1980s to pause puberty in adolescents with gender dysphoria, they state. The independent journalist Jesse Singal, a longtime critic of slipshod science reporting, demolishes these misleading claims in a Substack post. In fact, the use of puberty blockers to treat gender dysphoria is a new and barely researched phenomenon, he notes. We have close to 0 studies that have tracked gender dysphoric kids who went on blockers over significant lengths of time to see how they fared. I believe that this will go down as a major journalistic blunder that will be looked back upon with embarrassment and regret. This is where we are because first we do no harm, but instead what we're going to do is we're just going to treat these kids and we're going to say this is what's right for them because this is what we're told to do. And because of that, to heck with the results. We'll see what happens down the road. My friends, that is not how we practice medicine. It's not how I practice medicine. This is scary. This is dangerous. And this is pseudoscience. This is pseudoscience. It's not real science. And we need to be discerning and understanding what is happening to these children. Fortunately, glimmers of light are shining through on gender care controversy. The New York Times has lately begun publishing more balanced articles on the matter, much to the anger of activists. And various European countries have started reassessing and limiting youth hormone treatments. England's National Health Service recently commissioned the respected pediatrician Hilary Cass to conduct a sweeping review of the evidence supporting youth gender medicine. Her nearly 400-page report is a bombshell, finding that evidence supporting hormone interventions for children is weak, while the long-term risks of such treatments have been inadequately studied. For most young people, the report concludes, a medical pathway will not be the best way to manage their gender-related distress. And in April, the NHS announced that it will no longer routinely prescribe puberty-blocking drugs to children. Hallelujah. The real scientists have intervened and have made real, important decisions. It's interesting. Scientific American has yet to offer an even-handed review of the new scientific skepticism toward aggressive gender medicine. Instead, in February, the magazine published an opinion column titled, interestingly, "Pseudoscience has long been used to oppress transgender people." Shockingly, it argues for even less medical caution in dispensing radical treatments. The authors approvingly note that, quote, many trans activists today call for diminishing the role of medical authority altogether in gatekeeping access to trans health care. They are taking the bold stance of referring to real medical professionals as pseudoscientists. And their answer to that is, let's just remove the scientists altogether. My friends, let's have our eyes opened to what is happening here. See, their agenda is being challenged by real scientists. So the response is, let's just remove the scientists. They argue that patients should have access to hormones and surgery on demand. And in an implicit warning to anyone who might question these claims and goals, the article compares today's skeptics of aggressive gender medicine to Nazi eugenicists and book burners. So they're claiming they're the real scientists. Let's not let the real scientists get in the way. This is what's happening. This is so eye-opening and it's so overt. It's like right here in front of us. That's the goal of this podcast, is just simply to reveal to you what is happening so that our eyes are open and we can push back. This article concludes, there's nothing wrong with vigorous debate over scientific questions. I agree. In fact, in both science and journalism, adversarial argumentation is a vital tool in testing claims and getting to the truth. Couldn't agree more. A bad idea can hover in the ether of a culture if there is no norm for speaking out, Shermer says. Where some trans activists cross the line is in trying to derail debate by shaming and excluding anyone who challenges the activists' manufactured consensus. And there's the key. There's the nugget of this podcast that I want to share with you. Do not be intimidated. Do not be shamed or excluded. Don't hesitate to challenge like I'm doing now. I still have freedom to sit behind this microphone in this country and to share my opinions, and I hope that freedom remains. And so this is our opportunity to speak out for the children. This is killing our children. This is maiming our children. Let's call it what it is. And the medical community is turning their back, closing their eyes, burying their head in the sand. Is that really what's happening? Not for me. If you do a Google search, you'll find most articles at the top actually defending the practice of gender affirming care with no evidence of outcome, harm, or even benefit. It just seems like the right thing to do. That's not science. That's pseudoscience. Studies have shown that 80% of gender confusion, quote, clears, end quote, by age 18. And yet we as a medical community are willing to intervene before that. 80%, that's an incredible number of just simply doing nothing and letting time take its course. It's an impelling, clear number. Cure number. 80%. If we just be patient. And what's this all about? We've talked about this many times on this podcast. It's about feelings. All we have when we are disconnected from spirit is our soul. And the highest form of our soul is simply our feelings. Everything's based on feelings. Would we perform a mutilating, irreversible procedure based on feelings? The answer is yes, we're doing it every day. It seems crazy. So my question is, how do we feel about suicide? Suicide's also feelings-based. Should we normalize those feelings? If somebody comes into my ER and says, I feel suicidal, should we say, oh, that's just normal? Good for you. Here, let's do everything that we can to keep you that way. No, we care deeply when someone is suicidal. We don't accommodate it. We treat it. We put resources around them to bring healing to their feelings. Their feelings are off. They're hurtful. They're painful. And it's usually the result of abuses in their life. The statistics are overwhelming. And instead of pinpointing the abuses in our life, we are coddling the result of the abuses and calling it normal. And that, my friends, is cruel. It's cruel. And we can no longer stand for it. So why just not let them express their feelings by killing themselves? They will feel better. But no, we impose a 72-hour hold. We see death as permanent and irreversible. And we see young people as vulnerable and not fully decisional. This is a big deal. And why in this topic do we simply just turn the other way and say, let's do mutilating procedures on you, because that might help your suicidality? My friends, this is such key. As they say, oh, this will help prevent suicidality. These kids are already suicidal. These kids are already depressed. These kids are already in pain and hurting. And any procedure isn't going to change that. It's just affirming their pain. It's not gender, I want to get the right word, gender affirming care. It's gender dysphoria affirming care. We're affirming their dysphoria, not affirming their gender. There's something more sinister at play. And this ties into our last season of topics, is they don't want parents involved in the decision. They think we have no business talking to children about sex or treating children's feelings. My friends, there's going to be lawsuits on this, and it's going to be big time. There's malpractice occurring, and I can see it, and I'm calling it out. I think this is dangerous, and I think this is painful. Children and women are being hurt, and they're being hurt big time. This is our talking point. I just want to close with reading Romans 1, because the Bible has a way of putting its finger on societal issues so that we can address them and we can right the ship. Romans 1:18, the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. Therefore, God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. Because of this, God gave them over to shameful lusts. Even their women exchanged natural sexual relations for unnatural ones. In the same way, the men also abandoned natural relations with women and were inflamed with lust for one another. Men committed shameful acts with other men and received in themselves the due penalty for their error. Furthermore, just as they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind, so that they do what ought not to be done. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. Hard-hitting verses, but could it be more accurate to what's happening right now in our culture? But let's be real as compassionate followers of Christ. We don't want people to die. We don't want people to be in pain. We don't want people to be condemned. We don't want people to be given over to their feelings and their lusts so that they are controlled by them. That's not what we want. So we need to be the salt and the light on this earth to show them the better way, the ways of God, because his ways are higher than our ways. We don't do this because we want to hit them over the head with the Bible. We do it because we love them. As a physician, I love my patients. I care for them. And hopefully every day, to the best of my ability, I show them compassion. But that means understanding where they're at, their pain. It sometimes involves jumping in with them and helping them walk through some of these areas of life. Not just calling their pain normal. My friends, thank you for letting me share my heart today with you. This is a sensitive topic, and yet it is ever present right now. And I believe it's such a sinister manifestation of the heart of evil that is happening in this world. And I think it's also a manifestation of the pseudoscience that has crept into our society, and we cannot let it happen. And as a scientist, I'm going to draw that line in the sand so that we remain credible, helpful, and purposeful here on this earth. Thanks for listening again today. Hey, would you check out pushbackculture.org? Pushbackculture.org not only links to these podcasts and videos, but also a place to donate if you feel moved, also a place to leave questions, comments, or future topics that you would like to see addressed. Thanks again for listening. I look forward to connecting with you again next week. So let's go together now to set and shape the culture.